go. Nice spotted bass right there. What's up, guys? Welcome to Fish the Moment. Here today on Beaver Lake, and that's a beautiful spotted bass. Just found a bunch of fish schooled up out here on a big hump, and I saw them actually suspended at my graph, and I threw a little swim bait down there. And before my bait could even hit the bottom, that beautiful spot just crushed it. That's a healthy one too. Let me get back down there really quick before these fish cool down, because they are chewing right now. I had 3 or 4 grab it just on that cast. I just crushed it again. Got him. That's a good one. Awesome. Get up your fish. Not really that good, but another good spotted bass. This is a good limit hole right here. Beautiful fish. I'm only out here for a couple hours this afternoon, guys. I just kind of snuck out after finishing some editing. That is a beautiful spot. Again, just on a little 3.8-inch swim bait. And this spot is really cool. It's actually a hump that's right by a creek channel, and there's a really big rocky spot on there, and I'll show you on my graph what it looks like. And I've found fish here in the past, and for whatever reason, there always seems to be a big group of fish that pull up here. It's probably because it's in the mouth of this pocket, close to the main lake, and it has that nice rocky spot on it. Okay, so let me show you where I'm catching these fish on the Navionics map. So here is the main river channel on Beaver Lake, and you can see that it actually forks off and goes into this creek. And so you have the main river channel here and a creek channel here. And the spot I was catching them was in the mouth of this creek right here. And if we zoom in, you can actually notice that there's a little bit of a hump right next to this creek channel. And this hump has some really good rock on it. And the hump is in about 27 to 35 feet of water, somewhere in there. And those fish were suspended right on top of that hump. And here's an image from the down imaging from my Humminbird Onyx unit. And as you can see, there's a really big rock here, or a rocky patch. There's also some brush. And right here in the black space, you'll notice some little dots. And all those little dots are suspended bass. And whenever I see these little dots up over the top of cover like these trees or this rock, I know I can probably get them to bite on a swim bait or some sort of bait that targets suspended bass. Okay, so I made 20 or 30 more casts across that hump, and I didn't get too many more bites. I got a few that just kind of just pushed the bait, but they weren't committing to it. So what I think happened is once I caught those first couple fish, I pulled the school off the spot. And so what I probably will do is just come back another hour and see if these fish reload up on top of that hump. And normally if you catch a couple fish in back-to-back casts and don't catch any, you can come back an hour later and normally catch a few more fish off that spot. So I'm gonna come back, I'm gonna keep throwing the swim bait around a little bit. I might try to drop shot this a little bit later too, but for right now, I'm sick with the swim bait because it's pretty fun catching them. Got him. Man, that one crushed it. There we go. Here's another spot, guys. It's a little largemouth. Just graphed around the corner from the spot where I was just catching them, and I found this giant rock that was over like right next to the creek channel, and there's a bunch of fish suspended over the top of it. And I want to get back down there because I got another bite right before that one grabbed it. And it seems like there's a lot of fish sitting out here in like the 30 to 35 foot range, and they're just kind of suspended over top of structure. In the fall, these fish are either going to be right up on the bank, or they're going to be transitioning from the main lake over here back in these creeks. And they like to use these little stopping points like the humps, this big rock here, and they basically just follow the bait, and wherever the bait is, those fish will be. And in the fall, what I'll do is I'll just graph around like I'm doing right now until I see suspended fish on my graph, and then I'll just cast that swim bait down through them, and boom. That's 3 fish right now in the first like hour I've been here, so that's not too bad. Go. That's a good one. Better one at least than the last one. Another chunky spot. This is great, guys. Look at these fish. That's a good spot. That's a 2-pounder right there. They're chewing that bait. I'm getting bit every cast down there, and I'm getting like 3, 4, 5 fish hitting the swim bait every time. So that's a really good one. I'm gonna put it back down there, try to get another one. Look at that fish. That's just beautiful. Again, on that swim bait. And then basically, I'm doing the exact same thing I was doing on their spot, just casting that bait out, counting it down 10 to 11 seconds, because those fish are suspended in about 10 to 12 feet, maybe 15 feet right now. And then I'm just trying to slowly reel that bait over the top of that rock. And if you notice on that last retrieve, I was reeling that thing in and I sped it up a couple times because I was feeling some fish kind of nip at it. And after I sped it up, that fish came up and just crushed it. And all I do is just, again, 3 or 4 reels of that handle, and normally they'll come up and just choke it. Huh, it's kind of funny. I'm just getting 2 bites per spot, seems like. For whatever reason, after 2 fish, either I pull that school off of the spot and the fish are now kind of just suspended here and not set up on that rock anymore, or when I caught those couple fish and I released them back, they went straight down to those fish and tattletaled on me. And sometimes if you release a fish, they'll go back and spook the school. So sometimes if I'm fishing in a tournament, stuff like that, you can normally get a few extra fish just because I'll be throwing those fish in the live well, but there's no point in throwing them in the live well here. So, but in a tournament, just put that fish in the live well and it won't spook them as much. And here's a look at that big rock I was talking about using my down imaging. And this is the big rock. And then if you look in the black space above the rock, again, you'll see a ton of little dots. And all those dots are suspended bass. And I got really excited when I saw this picture because I know I can normally get fish that are set up like this to bite on a swim bait. Okay, I have to retie here real quick, so I might as well show you what I'm throwing. This is just a Strike King 3.5-inch Rage Tail swimmer in the Ghost Minnow color. I'm just throwing on a 1/2-ounce jig head, and I found this at just a local tackle shop. I have no idea who makes them, but they're pretty cheap and they work pretty well. So I'm throwing that with a 7'2" medium heavy action bait casting rod with an extra fast tip, so I don't pull the hook out of those fish. Sometimes they'll just nip at this bait and I'll hook them in the top of the mouth or just the corner of the mouth, and so I like a little bit lighter action rod, but still a long rod so I can get a good leverage on the long cast. And then I'm just throwing a 6:3-to-1 gear ratio reel with 15-pound fluorocarbon line. That's it. Well, it looks like I'm only getting 2 fish per spot right now, so I'm just gonna keep graphing. I have about an hour before the sun goes down, 1.5 hours, and so I'm just gonna keep graphing, looking for some suspended fish over that deeper water. Yeah. This is just too easy right now, guys. It's a good fish. I don't know how big this one is. This feels a little bit better. Oh, smallie. There we go. Let's take it. There we go. Look at that smallie, guys. That is a good one. Wow. That is a nice smallmouth. Look how beautiful that thing is. Oh, getting the sunlight too. That is beautiful. Look at that fish. Wow. That's a really nice one. Just found another spot like 20 yards down from where I just caught those last couple. Threw that swim bait down there. And man, that is a great fish. Look at that thing. Beautiful. 2.33, that's a really nice smallmouth throw down here in Arkansas. They don't get super big out here on beaver, but man, that is a chunky one. That actually might be a mix between a spot and a smallmouth. Like a mean mouth, I think is what they call them. So that's a beautiful fish. Let's let her go. Oh man, that is awesome. It's like clockwork right now with this swim bait. Again, just finding those suspended fish out here offshore, and these fish are actually not that far off the bank. They're just kind of in that 35 foot of water range, 30-35 feet, and just suspended over brush, rocks, all kinds of stuff. And as long as you can see them on your graph, count that swim bait down about 10 feet, they'll come up and crush it. I'm also keeping the same swim bait on this entire time. That means they're choking it, not chewing the tail. So let's try to get one more off this spot, especially if it's a nice mean mouth like that last one. And here's a picture from my down imaging of the spot where I caught that mean mouth. And as you can see, there's just a series of brush piles. They're sitting in 30 feet of water. And there are just a few dots in this image, but there were enough to make me stop and make a couple casts. And I only caught one fish off the spot. And normally what I've found is that if you find a spot that only has 5 or 6 dots on it, normally those fish are going to be bigger. And if you see a spot with a ton of dots on it, normally those are going to be smaller fish. So if you want to try to focus on catching bigger fish that are suspended, just look for a few isolated dots rather than a ton in one area. Now here's a look at the spots where I caught those last few fish using a Navionics map. And again, here's the main river channel, and it forks off into that creek channel that actually fed the first place that I fished. And here's the big rock where I caught those first few fish, and then here is the brush pile where I caught that mean mouth out of. And the spot where I got those fish is just a point that sticks out into the main lake with a creek channel running up right next to it. And in the fall, these fish like to get really close to the edge of these creek channels and main river channels. And so this is just a great spot. It's in the mouth of a creek, right off the main lake with some really good cover. A perfect spot to find fall bass. So after catching that mean mouth, I continued running this pattern for another half mile down the lake, and I actually found 3 more areas that had fish on them. And I ended up catching, I think, 10 or 12 more bass, and none of them were huge, so I'm not going to show you each fish, but here's just a little compilation of some of the better ones I caught. And again, all those fish were on that single swim bait, and they were right next to the creek channel. And again, I was only fishing for 2 or 3 hours this afternoon, and I hadn't been out to Beaver Lake in like 3 months, so I had to find these fish quickly, and I had no idea where to look. But what I figured out is that all these fish were sitting right on the main river channel or right next to a creek channel in 25 to 35 feet of water around some type of cover or rocks and wood, something like that. And so all I did was look at my Navionics map that I have right here, and I looked for all of the places where the main river channel ran up against shallower water, like these spots here. And every spot I graphed that was in 35 feet of water right next to the creek channel had fish on it. Some spots had more fish than others, but pretty much every spot I was looking at had at least a few dots on the graph. So this is a pretty easy pattern to replicate, and even though I was only out for a few hours, I was able to put a lot of fish in the boat pretty quick just by identifying that pattern and then moving quickly and fishing a lot of the spots. Well guys, the sun just creeped over the treetops and I need to get home, but I had a blast this afternoon catching fish offshore on that single swim bait. I was only here for 2.5 to 3 hours and I caught 15 fish, so that's definitely not a bad afternoon fishing. And so I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something about how to catch suspended bass in the fall and how to use your electronics to find those suspended bass and hopefully catch more on your home lake. And one thing I want to call out is I started a Patreon page. And Patreon is a monthly subscription site where you can get one-on-one personal fishing lessons with me. So if you want to have me break down your home lake and help you find offshore spots just like the one I was fishing today, go onto my Patreon page using the link down in the description. And other than that, hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. And if you like the video, hit like and subscribe down below. Leave a comment if you have any questions, and share the video out with a friend if you think they'd enjoy. So again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.